There's also trouble inside campaign world. So I think it's time for the Trump campaign. This is really when you've got to build your momentum. If the campaign world itself, and they are starting to tell the media that there's a lot of confusion about who's in charge. Is it the former Biden team that Harris left in place? Is it the Obama team that Harris brought in post pushing Biden out? That's who is in charge. You always have to know in a campaign, ultimately, you can debate everything. You can come up with great ideas. Somebody has to be the one who can say yes or no, and it can't be the candidate all the time or the VP. It's got to be someone who's inside working with the team on a daily basis, who's approving the ad, who's approving the ad script, where it's going to run, how many markets are we going to run it in, how much are we going to spend, what states are we going to next. All of that has got to be something that ultimately one person has to be able to make the call on, and everyone has to trust whether they took their decision or not, because you have to build that team element that we're all trying to put forward our best thoughts and minds, and it means sometimes your idea is going to be taken and sometimes it's not. That's not what happened, though, when Axios, of all places, calls it a Frankenstein team that doesn't have, quote, good vibes.
That's right. And when you look at a campaign that has now shifted to the joy campaign, what it sounds like is happening within the campaign itself is less than that. It sounds like there is frustration. It appears to be two different competing teams to some degree, where there were holdovers from the Biden campaign and then new employees, new campaign staffers brought on that are former Obama staffers. One thing to note is that Harris doesn't have these decades-long relationships with staffers because her turnover has been remarkably high. It's been called out that vice president.
Chief of staff was inside the vice president's. I mean, did she go through like 30 or 40 or 50, like high level?
It is record number of turnover within the vice president's office. So what do you have to do? You have to keep some people on that are Biden loyalists, and you have to bring people in from the Obama team. I also think there's probably tension because those two teams historically didn't work super well together during the Obama administration. And when you see kind of the tension between Biden and President Obama himself, now you see that it's probably spilling over in the campaign as well.
And it plays into this story about the Harris campaign. Yesterday they finally determined that they were going to go by the CNN rules of that first debate. The mics would be muted when they're not talking, and when the question's not to you, and then when it is, that your microphone will be turned on, or if you're allowed to respond. And so Harris, they kept making these requests, kept making these requests, but ABC has said no. They were trying to get Donald Trump into one of those matches where he's, again, I guess, trying to talk over Harris. They're hoping people wouldn't actually get to hear what she has to say, I guess, because it honestly may be the first time she's ever in like a press conference type setting. Because I think when people say they want to see Harris do an interview, what they're really talking about is Harris taking questions from the press, not in a sit-down, pre-taped format. Yes, she's doing an interview today, but she's not doing it by herself. Walz is with her. She's doing it pre-taped while we're on the air today to run in prime time. CNN will cut it up. They're not going to show it to you straight. Some parts will be cut completely. They may even say we're going to save others and we'll air those later in different broadcasts about different parts because they're going to want to comment on it. And then, they may even leak some of it out earlier in the day today to give you some of a preview. That's a pre-taped interview where you still are leaning on your vice presidential nominee to help get you through it. So for me, that's not what people are asking for or what the press is really asking for. What the press is asking for is an opportunity. You stand up in the podium and you take our questions. And some of the questions you may not like, but you've got to decide how you're going to handle them. You can kind of deflect. You can handle them one time straight on and say, you know what, I'll address this one time. Boom, here it is. But I'm not going to address it again. You can do it like that. You can take the opportunity to show people that you're not afraid, that in fact, yes, you have a different campaign strategy. You think that maybe I don't need to be doing this as much as President Trump does, but I'm not afraid of doing these. I just think it's not the best use of my time on the campaign trail. That's something you could do after you actually do one of those press conferences. But Will, as somebody who walks into a studio, 5 out of 7 days a week, and literally, yes, we prep, but there is no script. There is no teleprompter here. I'm not reading a teleprompter to you right now. When we take your questions, you tell our call screener, kind of what they'll be, but honestly, that's about 60%. On the time.
So what is amazing to me is that there's really a tale of two campaigns going on right now for the Democrats. There's the media-created, made-for-TV Kamala Harris, which is, look at how well her polls are. Look at how much money is pouring into the campaign now that Biden has dropped out. Look how great it is. Look how wonderful the DNC was. It was so joyful and angry at the same time. And then you have these leaks that are going to Axios that are saying the opposite of saying, like, look, yeah, we may be raising money and we're in a good position, but people are colliding within the campaign. There are Biden staffers that are frustrated. They're having to defend her previous policies about Medicare for all or ending fracking. And now, I mean, I can't imagine what they're thinking right now about the new border wall plan that Kamala Harris has plagiarized from President Trump's campaign. But it just seems that we're living in this weird, bizarro world where there is the media narrative, which sets her on a pedestal, allows her to get away with not talking to them for over a month, and now doing a very friendly interview with the support of her vice presidential pick nominee with her. And I have to think what those conversations have to be like inside the campaign, where there does seem to be chaos and turmoil and maybe some animosity against the Obama versus Biden people inside that campaign, where you're sitting here and you're like, you know what? We know this optically isn't going to be the best thing, that the first interview she does is with CNN, and as well, it's not solo. It is pre-taped with her vice presidential pick. And they have to be thinking it's either they have to think this doesn't look great, but it's the best we've got right now, and so we're going to go for it. And at least maybe it'll silence the talking points that she hadn't done an interview, but also maybe everyone will forget it as they go into the Labor Day holiday.
Yeah, I think, two things. One is it probably won't be horrible. It probably won't be great because it's pre-taped. So, again, it's hard to make those pre-taped things really horrible, because with two people sitting there to jump in when they need to, I mean, they cut around it. CNN is obviously pushing out Harrison. The interview, they want, obviously, if they want to get more of these, they're not going to try to make her look horrible. So that's one sect. That's, as you said, Will, the part two of that is that, again, this is going into a holiday weekend. And third, they can call it an interview. And I guess technically it is, even though it's a pre-taped interview. It's not live. So there's nothing about this that is unscripted in many ways. And you're not going to get I don't think there's any gotcha questions that are coming forward, because the campaign, you'd fire that campaign person who was, I guess, especially with all the Frankenstein-ness going on and the confusion going on, if they didn't do a good job negotiating this interview, knowing that it was going to be the big time. You said, yes, see, I will do an interview. People want to see a press conference. That's what they're really talking about. The media is saying, we, as the traveling press corps, need an opportunity to ask questions. You're not going to take questions from all 25 or how many there ever are following her around at a given time, but you do need to take some that are not always pleasant. You take some hard ones. You take some easy ones. You take every one of them, and if you're good at it, you knock them out of the park. It doesn't matter if they are the toughest questions or the easiest questions, because you prep and you know what you're going to say, especially after being vice president. I mean, because CNN is playing it up like, oh, it's the first interview. I think that's really, again, stretching the term interview. Technically, I guess, yes, it is an interview. It's really a packaged piece is what we call it more in like the media world, because it's like a package that you're playing around her becoming the candidate post now that we're outside of the convention, on the campaign trail. This is not a press conference. This is not taking live questions. This is not being on the airplane and taking 5-6 questions from the press coming back to see the traveling press corps. I mean, imagine being on that press team, right? A press corps. You're traveling, you have to follow her around all over the country, and she never takes your questions. I mean, all they're doing is reporting at pre-planned events where she's reading off a teleprompter with a hand-selected crowd. I mean, Will, that is not only boring, but it could exactly be boring, may be exactly what they're going for here.
Well, and I think CNN is in a very precarious situation.
Cemetery thing, a story,
right?
Which, let me just say something. Donald Trump went. Tulsi Gabbard went. Kamala Harris put out a statement. Okay. So whatever about their campaign staff and some photographer who did have the credentials or didn't have the right credentials, Donald Trump was there with the families. So even these other people in the military commenting that weren't there, he was there with those Gold Star families. They were happy he was there. That at least a former president of the United States was there acknowledging the loss of life. Not Biden and not Harris. By the way, why couldn't Biden go to that? I mean, he's a lame duck president at this point. Oh, yeah, because he's on another vacation, I believe.
He's on the beach in Delaware.
Yeah, so he's gone but he's not going by the campaign headquarters in Delaware, but his team is still stuck there. I mean, the whole thing, just of this week of these optics, they want to make her boring. They want you to think they're not radical, they're not extreme, they're the coach and the teacher and the former prosecutor, and, boring is good because you'll get to focus on your life and don't worry about all the money that they're going to take from you and the inflation and not being able to afford anything.